بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونثني عليه الخير كله ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل ومن يضل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. وقال النبي صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم إن الله تعالى إذا أحب قوما ابتلاهم فمن رضي فله الرضا ومن سخط فله السخط أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والتسليم. My dear respected brothers, sisters, elders, youngsters, teachers and students, one more time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was trying to catch myself because my brother Shaykh Abdul, he doesn't fail to make everyone laugh, even if it's at the expense of his own brother. For those who attended my wedding know that it was more of a roast show than it was my wedding. So I'll try to refocus onto my topic, inshallah. And coming off a 20-hour call shift, it's kind of hard, but I'll try my best, inshallah. Respected brothers and sisters, there is no doubt that everyone sitting in this room, whether you're sitting here or watching online, old, young, male, female, students, teachers, all alike, have had our fair share of difficulties in our lives. There's no doubt. Whether or not it's a 2-year-old little girl, or if it's a 70-year-old gentleman, everyone has their own subjective difficulties, sometimes objective difficulties and trials that they have to endure throughout their lives. And it's not an alien concept that these difficulties fall upon Muslims or upon human beings. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reminds us in the Quran, in Surah Ankabut, Allah starts by saying, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا. Is it possible that people can say that we are believers and expect not to be tested? And expect not to go through difficulties and challenges and trials and tribulations? This is going to happen. And this is what has happened in the past. Every single prophet that came had their fair share of difficulties. The Sahaba radiallahu ajma'in had their share of difficulties as well. And you and I, there's no question about it that we will also have, and we have had, our quota of difficulties and trials and tribulations. Some are faced with more challenges than others. The ideology of the difficulties that we face can be multifactorial. But the common denominator is that we will face difficulties. So the question is not whether or not you and I will have to go through hardships. The question is, the million-dollar question is, how do you and I, how do we individually, how do we collectively respond to these challenges? How do we react in these circumstances? And what are those things that we can do that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us, that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us, that can heal us and expedite this process that we are going to have to face? The process of healing from a challenge, healing from a difficulty. It's something that you and I will all have to face. But there are solutions that the Prophet ﷺ has given us through his prophetic teachings that can help expedite this process and make it more memorable and make it more tolerable. Brothers and sisters, today's topic is not about every single challenge that we can be faced with and how we can cope with all of them. There's no way I can speak about that in the few minutes that I have left before Maghrib Salah. But rather, most of us can admit and can attest to the fact that most of our challenges either fall under two categories: a physical difficulty that we have to endure, or an emotional / psychological difficulty that we have to endure. And if you were paying attention and not on your phone, you may have recognized that I didn't say spiritual difficulty. And that is because, or spiritual challenge, and that is because spiritual challenges and how to overcome those is a topic on its own. Tazkiyatun nafs is a topic on its own. Today, inshallah, I will try to focus on mainly how we can overcome our emotional, psychological difficulties, as well as some physical difficulties that if we are faced with. What are the prophetic teachings and methods that were taught to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that can help us overcome these challenges? First of all, it is a known fact that whatever trial that we are faced with, whether it's psychological or whether it's physical, although the ideology may be clear that this is mainly a psychological issue, or this is mainly a physical issue. Someone got into a car accident, he broke his femur, or he injured his lungs, or whatever happened. That's a physical harm that he is faced with, or that she is faced with. Allah save us all from such type of difficulties. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. But even in that circumstance, we all can acknowledge and agree on this fact that even in that circumstance, although primarily it's a physical challenge, there has to be emotional or psychological strength that he has to have or she has to have that will help them overcome that physical challenge. Does that make sense? So a person who's sitting on the hospital bed, whose femur is fixed, IM nail is in, everything is looking good, x-rays look beautiful, CT scanogram looks beautiful. I know this sounds like Chinese to you, but I'm sorry, this is the language I speak sometimes, by which my brother doesn't like me anymore, which is okay. Because he will like me after 5 years, inshallah, and you know why. Yeah, thank you for laughing, because he deserves it. 5 years from now, watch the introduction, it will have changed. Yeah. Anyways, we know that a person's his physical, whatever he was faced with is fixed, right? Like if his femur was broken, it's fixed, right? The thigh bone, that's what it's called. It's fixed. But that person is just not emotionally strong to get up and walk, right? You did a hip surgery. Now, the best outcomes are the ones that when a person starts walking right after surgery. You don't want him to get a clot, get some type of pneumonia, so you encourage them to walk. But we have seen in the hospital, people are fine physically after the injury, but psychologically or mentally, they're not strong enough. And that hinders their ability to overcome their physical difficulty as well. And vice versa is also true. That someone who is suffering from an emotional setback, from a psychological setback, if they don't continuously actively engage in physical well-being, that emotional setback will be exacerbated. And a study out of the University of Chicago found A study out of University of Chicago found that people who are going through emotional stress, when they exercise, that they have a faster time to recovery from their emotional setback. So we know for a fact that these two are intertwined. The question is, how do we respond to these difficulties? And like I started my talk off by saying that everyone has to be faced with these challenges. If we are going to talk about mercy to mankind, Rasulullah ﷺ, the best man to ever walk on earth, the most beautiful person to ever walk on earth, the most perfect man to ever step foot on earth, the most noble person to ever come and that has ever come and that will ever come until the day of judgment. And the closest person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Habib, is closer than Al-Khalil. Al-Habib, he was Habibullah. Inni Habibullah. He was the beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not the other Habibatis that we call. This is a real Habib of Allah, the real beloved of Allah. Even he was put through so much challenges, many, many different trials and tribulations that started before even he was born. Before he even entered this world, he had lost his father. He was born as an orphan. He was raised by a single mother till the age of 6, and then he lost his mother, Amina. And if you go to the place where she is buried, you will find how abandoned and how barren that area is. And if you look at the story of how he was crying when his mother passed away, when he was 6 years old, you can imagine a 6-year-old child can remember their pain. That's a time in psychology, they say that a child can tell the difference between life and death around 5 and 6 years of age. So he realized that his mother had passed away. And then at 8, he loses, who does he lose? His grandfather. And then later in his life, we know there was a year of grief where he lost Abu Talib and he lost his wife Khadija radiallahu anha, the first Muslim, the first supporter, the one who embraced him when no one else was ready to embrace him, the one who comforted him. He lost her. His life was full of trials. sallallahu alayhi wasallam was a man who had 7 children, 6 of which 3 boys and 3 girls. 3 girls, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Zainab radiyallahu anhunna jami'a. And 3 boys, Abdullah, Qasim, and Ibrahim radiyallahu anhum jami'a. All had passed away in his life. The last of which, Ibrahim radiyallahu anhu, passed away at the age of 2 when Rasulullah was about 62 years old. Imagine, at that age of his life, a year before he passes away, he loses his son, Ibrahim radiyallahu anhu. And then we know Fatima radiyallahu anha passed away 6 months after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The moral of the story is, he is a man that also had to go through difficulties. But how did he respond? Like I said, the $1,000,000 question is, how do we respond? In the first, I will give 3, inshallah, solutions. And there are many. This is not meant to be a comprehensive lecture. But 3 solutions that, inshallah, if we try to implement, it will allow us to find comfort and find ease out of these difficult circumstances that you and I will have to face throughout our lives. The first thing that we look into his life, we will find is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, irrespective of the magnitude or the tragedy that he was faced with, the magnitude of the tragedy that he was faced with, he always remained optimistic. He always found a way to grow from that difficulty. So point number 1 of healing from the prophetic method is finding a way to grow from that challenge. Finding a way to stay optimistic in that difficulty. And we have many stories that can remind us of this. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if we look at when Uhud took place, 3rd year after Hijrah, and the Muslims took a big setback. That was a battle when he lost his beloved uncle, Hamza radiallahu anhu. Mus'ab bin Umair, the ambassador to Medina, had passed away in that battle. The one who had taught the people of Medina Quran was a shaheed in Uhud. Now these individuals, great giants, had passed away in Uhud. And then 2 years after, less than 2 years after, the huge battle of Khandaq Ahzab took place. This battle, imagine, after one setback, a huge battle where the Quraysh decided that now the Muslims took defeat, now we will come and finish them off for good. And they had made this agenda to come to Medina and wipe the Muslims off the surface of the earth. So they come with 10,000 well-armed mushrikeen, an army of 10,000 disbelievers. And the Muslims only had 3,000 ill-armed people that were going against these 10,000 people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Surah Ahzab, of how the Muslims felt that this was it. There were times where they felt, Mata Nasrullah, like when is the help of Allah going to come? And when is this going to finish? And they were at the brink of breaking down. But at that point, Rasulullah, the leader of the nation, stood up and reminded them to stay optimistic. He was a man that even in that battle, Yawm al-Ahzab, imagine this battle, or there was no battle, but this face-to-face took place for about a month. 6 miles long trench. And this was that same battle when the Sahabas would come to Rasulullah complaining of hunger, and they would lift up their shirts and show Rasulullah that they had stones on their bellies out of hunger. And Rasulullah, this is that battle when he lifted up his shirt and he showed them that he had 2 stones, that he had 2 stones tied to his stomach so that his back was stabilized. And this was that battle in which the Muslims thought this was over. But in that time, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stayed optimistic. It was that time when there was a huge boulder that the Sahabas were trying to break. And it comes in hadith, they presented this boulder because they couldn't dig this trench further because there was a huge boulder in the way. And they presented this boulder to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Said, we can't get past this boulder. Sakhra, please help us. And sallallahu alaihi wasallam, instead of being an individual, he's like, oh, call someone else to do it. You know what, I'm too good to take an axe and to strike this boulder. Rather, he was a man that not only talked the talk, but also walked the walk. He took that axe and he hit it on that boulder. And it cracked it into 1/3. And he said, "U'titu," that I have been given Miftaah Sham. I have been given the keys of Sham. Meaning Sham is Fath. Sham will be conquered. And the second time he struck it, he said, I have been given the keys of Yemen. And he said that now Yemen will be conquered. And he said the third time, "U'titu mafatih Rum," that now the third time I have been given the keys of Rome. Dear respected brothers and elders, Sahabas were confused. In this situation when we're about to lose, how is he talking about conquering Sham? How is he talking about conquering Rome? How is he talking about conquering Yemen? But this was the optimism of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this was a battle, when they won this battle, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent help. And we know that these Quraysh, they took cover and they went back to Mecca defeated. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Yawm al-Ahzab, نَغْزُهُمْ وَلَا يَغْزُونَا. Now a time has come that they will never come back to us. It is time that we are on the forefront. We will never be on the back end of defeat. Rather, we will be on the forefront. We will be the ones who are going to advance. And from that battle onwards, never a time came where the Quraysh were ever able to come to Medina and harm the people of Medina. My dear respected brothers and sisters, remember that any difficulty that comes, you can find a way to grow. You can find a way to stay optimistic. There's so much research that has shown. There's a research that came out of Italy in 2010 that showed that people who stay optimistic in times of difficulty, they have better problem-solving ability, a higher level of cognitive function. They have a higher level of adaptability. That usually in a time of trials and tribulations, the one thing you look for is, how adaptable are you? How flexible are you? Can you still think straight? And this shows that staying optimistic, the research has shown that staying optimistic in times of trials and tribulations will allow a person to think more clear, will allow a person to be more adaptable, will allow a person to have a plan B and to have a plan C. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam have also taught us this. And we know, if anyone has known us and know what our family has gone through, and I don't want to talk about it now, but we know that we lost our brother, Abdul rahimahullah, Shaykh Abdul rahimahullah, in 2020, October 5th at 3 p.m. is when I got the phone call. But we know, and anyone who has seen us since then or at that moment knows how difficult it was for us. But I stand here and I swear to Allah that the amount that my brothers and I and people around us can attest to how much we have grown from that difficulty, I don't think we would have grown otherwise. And that's not to say that we should ask for trials and tribulations. But the point is, when these difficulties come, and they will come, we have to find a way to grow. And I personally, now, for me, and I just came off a night shift, for me to wake up in the middle of the night, inshallah it stays that way, for a man who comes in a car accident, who has a broken leg and a broken bone, who has a head injury, I am exhausted. You can be exhausted. But I know that if I wasn't there to help my brother at that time, I have grown from that situation. Now it's not hard for me to get up and help that person. And you should also find a way that you have grown from your difficulty, that you will grow from your trial and tribulations, and find a way to take something good out of it. That if something similar ever happens, or if someone else goes through something like this, how can I be of assistance to them? How can I be a man or a woman that can help others in their difficulties? So the first lesson is finding a way to grow, remaining optimistic in the face of difficulties. The second, and the important point that I want to mention here is that the optimism is not something that's an abstract concept. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. With every difficulty will come ease. So the idea of staying optimistic without any hope is not true. We stay optimistic because we know ease will come after. Allah Azza wa said, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Indeed, with every difficulty, yusra, ease will come. And for those like myself or like anyone sitting here that sometimes forget about that or not doubt it, but have second thoughts, is ease actually going to come? Am I ever going to get out of this black hole? Am I ever going to get through this challenge in my life? Allah is saying, you know what? إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. I will say this ayah twice for you. Allah brings this ayah twice for us. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Don't forget that after every difficulty, ease will come. And what's the second way that we can help ourselves overcome difficulties or expedite the process of healing? فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب. And that brings me to my second point, and that is prayer and dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us after every difficulty comes ease, and Allah is reminding us in the Quran, the ayah that comes right after, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ إِذَا فَرَغْتَ مِنْ صَلَاتِكَ فَسَلُ اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى فَانْصَبْ إِلَى دُعَائِهِ. That whenever you finish your salah, what that means is raise your hands to Allah and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. So the second way of healing from any challenge, physical, psychological, emotional, whatever challenge it is It's turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Raising our hands in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِذَا حَزَبَهُ أَمْرٌ فَزَعَ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ Hadith, Sahih Hadith. Whenever the Prophet was faced with a challenge, he wouldn't resort to some money. He wouldn't resort to his parents. He didn't have any parents. Who would he resort to? He didn't have any children. Who would he resort to? إِذَا حَزَبَهُ أَمْرٌ فَزَعَ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ He would immediately resort to salah. The direct connection that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is salah. And the way we can ask Allah for help is by raising our hands. And sometimes you are not able to raise your hands. Sometimes you're in a situation when you want to raise your hands, but you can't because of how awkward it may look. But remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah wa huwa ma'akum aynama kuntum. Allah is with us wherever we are. Regardless of which city we're in, of what situation we're in, we can always pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help through dua. And this idea of raising our hands to Allah and making dua to Allah and resorting to salah is a concept that nowadays the scientists have categorized, not salah, but they have their own category of meditation. Anyone have heard of this? Have you all heard of this? Meditation, right? Mindfulness. Now they have mindfulness apps that are making millions of dollars. All they do is tell you, take a deep breath in. Take a breath, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And then, you have these, I don't mean to say anything bad about psychologists or psychs, but they have psychologists who literally, when you go to therapy, and I was a psych major, so I can say this. You go to therapy and all they do is tell me about your feelings. And this is actually very important. Breathe in and breathe out, right? Brothers and sisters, we can do that 5 times a day. We just forget that we're doing that in salah. This is the time. And I don't want to take that important aspect away. There is an importance of meeting someone and talking to someone and counseling someone. Please don't take that the wrong way. But what I'm saying is nowadays people have put this umbrella of mindfulness and they make a lot of money out of it. And Shaykh Abdullah, I'm sure he's thinking about how he can get on that too for his dibs, right? Make a lot of money. And he thinks of all these apps that he wants to make. I said, brother, forget about making apps. Just keep talking and fundraising. That's how you make your money. Anyways, he makes a lot of money like that, mashallah. But nonetheless, mindfulness is something that that they talk about. And it's proven, research has shown, if we take our salah and we pray with khushu and khudu, which is considered mindfulness, praying with khushu and khudu, with concentration and devotion, is synonymous for mindfulness, right? It's synonymous for meditation. There are many ways that you can meditate. You don't always have to sit in a dark room. You can meditate in a room where you're going up and down and praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And research, now there's so much research out there, but there's a research study that came out of Ireland, and it's interesting. It showed that people who engage in mindfulness and meditation on a constant basis and consistent basis, that from an anatomical perspective, that their prefrontal cortex and their hippocampus, which are responsible for decision-making and memory, the activity is increased in those areas of the brain. And the amygdala, I know it sounds like Chinese again, but the area of the brain that gets triggered when we get upset at our wives for making cold tea. The area of the brain that gets upset for someone moving your shoes somewhere else. I don't know, whatever bothers you. That's called the amygdala, responsible for your emotions. The amygdala has decreased activity. So you're less likely to get upset, and your hippocampus and prefrontal cortex has increased activity, so you're more likely to make better decisions and have a better memory, which we all want. So this is, again, what was this the result of? Just consistent mindfulness. And from a physical standpoint, praying salah, we all want to exercise. Please go and exercise. And this is something we all should do. And this is part of my speech, inshallah, towards the end. I'll touch on it. But exercising is very important. But do we know that the 5 times prayer that we pray is also an exercise? I mean, we go up, we go down, we do all these sorts of things that people think we're like, I don't know what we're doing. We look cuckoo to them. But we are going up and down, in ruku, sujood. And check this out. Listen to this. There's a study that's a review article from UAE, University of Al-Ain, Hospital of Al-Ain, and it's a review article that cites other papers that were experimental studies that they found that 12 rakat of salah is equal to 30 minutes of light exercise. And they did a study where they measured the oxygen level and calories. And they found that people who pray consistently 5 times a day, they burn on average from 80 to 100 calories just by praying salah, praying properly. And they measured it based on the postures. So of course, we don't pray salah to burn calories. That's not a good idea, right? Especially in Ramadan. You're praying salah, 20 rakats, 8 rakats, for 3 rakats, whatever rakats you pray, it's great for you, mashallah. But in the middle, you're munching on some cake and drinking some juice. Regardless, the point I'm making here is that salah is another way we can heal ourselves through challenges and difficulties from a physical standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. And finally, I will say the third way we can heal ourselves or expedite the process of healing is by reminding ourselves that we are never alone. Doesn't matter what we're going through. Doesn't matter if we think we are alone. It doesn't matter if we have lost all of our friends. It doesn't matter if we have no family members in that area. Remember, لا تحزن إن الله معنا. What Rasulullah told Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, that do not worry, do not grieve. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. The word ma'ana is used multiple times in the Quran, and it has an interesting meaning. Ma'a, Allah could have said, عندنا وهو معكم أينما كنتم in Surah Hadid. Allah is with you wherever He is. Allah could have used عندكم وهو بكم وهو في جنبكم. Allah said ma'akum, and the tafsir of ma'a means ay nasrullahi ma'akum. Allah's help and Allah's presence is always with us. Wherever we may be, Allah's help and presence is always with us. And this is an important point that I want to make and conclude with, that sometimes, and oftentimes actually, if I may say, whenever we're faced with challenges and difficulties in our lives, if we don't find people that can help us, that can be with us, just to talk to, that difficulty will feel like a mountain to us. That challenge will feel like an unbearable challenge to us. If it wasn't for the people, the students, the brothers and sisters, the family members that were around us when we lost our brother, Allahu A'lam if we would be able to overcome that difficulty. And the people that were there know how much we relied on them for support. And it's not something that it's against the prophetic method. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he first got wahi, when he first got revelation, he came back. He was shocked. He was worried. And he came back to his wife Khadija and he sought some comfort from another person. Although he got revelation directly from Allah, Allah is not stopping us from seeking comfort from other people. Rather, Allah and His Prophet are encouraging us to be that source of comfort for someone else, irrespective if we are going through difficulties. And I always tell youngsters that if you're going through something in your life, try to find a way where you can help someone else out in a different arena or in a different category. So if you're faced with a financial challenge and Allah has given you maybe some experience in a certain field, go and be generous with your advice about that certain specialty. If you're good at a certain topic or a subject, go and share your knowledge with someone. You can't share, like Shaykh Abdul said, I'm a broke doctor. I can't give you money. But what I can give you is some advice for the little advice that I have. And if we live a life in such a way that when we are constantly trying to help others, we will be amongst those people whom Allah and the Prophet have said, وَاللَّهُ فِي عَوْنِ الْعَبْدِ مَا كَانَ الْعَبْدُ فِي عَوْنِ أَخِيهِ. Allah will constantly be in the help of those who are in the help of others. And that is my final point. Never feel isolated. Find some help. Social isolation is the biggest problem in this country. When people are going through challenges, they feel like other people will judge them. Please, when someone comes to you talking about their difficulty, their challenge, their trials and tribulations, if they have opened up to you, they have shared an amana with you. It is your job and our job to never share that amana with someone else. It is our job that even if we are going through the worst time of our lives, it is our job to be those people who continuously smile at others. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a man who was constantly faced with challenges in his life, who had deaths after deaths, hardships after hardships. Abdullah bin Harith radiallahu said, "Ma ra'aytu." Every time I saw him, illa huwa mutabassiman. Every time I saw him, he was smiling. And there's a reason smiling at your brother or sister is charity. There's a reason for that. Because so much can be accomplished by just sharing a beautiful smile with someone. When you're in the hospital, and now the mask policy is optional, now we can finally smile at other people, right? And we know so many times that patients in so much discomfort. Sharing a genuine smile with all caps, with a patient, wallahi, you will see the effect of it on their faces immediately. And we know, as human beings, Allah has given us this insight to know when someone is smiling for real or someone is smiling for fake, right? We know that this is something Allah has given us. And as a matter of fact, I will conclude with this, the importance of smiling. Because this is something that a lot of times people think, how can I smile? How can I look happy when I'm going through so much stuff myself? Remember, for the people who have lost their loved ones, How often do we ask ourselves, I wish I could see a smile again? I wish I could smile at him again. You know what's interesting? I was just thinking about it on the way in here. Whenever Allah speaks about people who have passed away and the people who don't have good deeds to give to Allah, they say, oh Allah, send me back to this world, فَأَصَّدَّقَ. Send me back to this world, not so that I can pray more, not so that I can do something else, pray, fast, many ways of worshiping Allah. But the word Allah uses, فَأَصَّدَّقَ. Send me back to this world so that I can give some charity. So I can give some charity which is symbolic to helping someone else. Which is also interesting because the word sadaqah is used and smiling is also sadaqah. So let's smile more. And Shaykh Abdullah says, I am that brother that you have to put money in to make me smile. I hope I proved him otherwise today. My dear respected brothers and sisters, smile at each other. Be happy with each other. And don't be that person that when someone passes away, you tell yourself, I wish I smiled at him one more time, or her. I wish I said one more nice thing to them before they passed away. Rather, be that person that knows that I treated that person with goodness. I treated that person with goodness, and with whatever I had, I shared with that person. And I was an individual who was there at the time of their need. Inshallah, if we do these three things. Number one, what was number one? Number one, positivity, optimism, seeking, growing from a challenge. What was number two? فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. Number two was what? Praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number three was what? Don't be that one who isolates yourself. Find help, find Allah. Allah is there for all of us. لا تحزن إن الله معنا. جزاكم الله خير for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.